1. I'm just checking if we're live. Are we live? It says we're live. Hello and welcome to the Level With Us Livecast. I am your host, Macro Santos, also known as Mechanic Critic, also known as Marco de Santos, and with me is my ever amazing, ever wonderful co-host.
Oh, Kier, that's me. I wasn't sure if you were going to introduce me or not.
Kieran.
I'm Kier, and I'm happy to be here. I do the customer service. I run the store.
I am your host.
Yeah, pleased to be here, Marco.
Pleased to be here. So you said you're a customer service. What do you do? What do you mean by customer service? Do you come in with plate of audits?
Well, mostly I just respond to emails or Kickstarter thing questions, whatever about replacement parts, late shipments, literally any question I have an answer to, or not an answer to, but whatever you can imagine.
Whatever I can imagine.
It's pretty chill mostly.
It's pretty chill. I think I'm not sure if that's pretty chill because I always imagine customer service to be one of the toughest jobs we have in the office because you end up getting all of these weird requests.
We get most of our customer service policies are we just give people what they want. So if someone's like, hey, I need a new box, we're like, okay, here it is, boom, done. So rarely do people get upset with us, at least on my end, which is nice.
Right.
So most people come there, and even when something goes horribly wrong, most people I talk to are super civil about it. No one's ever when level 99 games is the devil, your head belongs on a pike.
But have they ever gone full Karen on you? It's like, I want to speak to your manager.
No, I don't think so. There was one person I remember after Imperial shipped out that was just they just sent me an email that was basically just I am not happy with the product you released. And I was like, I'm sorry. Is there anything I can do for you? There's no. I just want you to know that I don't like you. And I'm like, okay.
All right. I mean, look, at least they were civil about it, I guess. Right?
Yeah, civil enough. I've seen less civil before, so.
Right. Makes sense. Quite honestly, Kier, I'm really interested in all the things you do because we end up actually working together on a lot of things without realizing it because I manage social media and stuff, which means I also get customer service requests.
Yeah, you sometimes bounce stuff back off to me. So usually if you're getting a customer service request, something's gone horribly wrong. I haven't received the email, or there's been a buffer and I haven't responded to it in time, or something like that. So I always, if we're ever on the same page, because I always view it as if we're talking to each other, something terrible is happening.
Yeah,
people should be talking to me usually.
Right. That tends to be it's very true, right? If we ever have to coordinate, that means something in the system has gone wrong, and this has been a recurring problem that we've had over the past few maybe months or so, wherein somehow, some way, customer service emails get lost in our system, and I don't know why it happens, and neither do you, right? I thought it
was some kind of error with because I have two emails, Kier at level99games.com and service at level99games.com, and I thought for a second maybe the second one wasn't reaching me.
Mm-hmm.
I haven't encountered it recently, so that's cool. But sometimes things just happen where usually if we do a huge promotion the
Exceed giveaway.
Yeah, Exceed giveaway. 500 people respond to me, right? So sometimes it just happens where things just creep up, right? Where I'm like, whoa, I wasn't prepared for that.
Right. Makes sense. Hashtag small indie company, right?
Yeah, hashtag small. Please understand.
Yeah. Oh, somebody in the comments said, Jonas Hedenquist, hopefully I pronounced your name. Not a question, just fawning praise. As someone who just the other day had his very first Exceed order saved by Kier, and who has worked in customer service and tech support for years, I think Kier is awesome. Not just for saving my decks, but for top-tier support, communication skills, etc. Seems like you have some fans in chat, Kier.
Thank you, Jonas. I love you.
All right. I honestly think that your job's probably one of the jobs that I don't think I could ever do, because your job involves a lot of coordinating between multiple people, and
Yeah, no,
also taking the brunt of disgruntled people.
most people, like I was saying, are pretty cool. Jonas is a pretty cool guy. I talked to him. Um, like I'm trying to think of there's not many instances where it's like um, having seen other customer service jobs where I think because we're such a small niche company,
Mhm.
we're also like a it's like an entertainment business, right? If I worked in customer service for like um, dish soap or something like that, right? Like
Or
some
maybe
kind
an
of
internet service provider.
internet service provider. Yeah, something that like no one wants. Everyone wants to play board games. Everyone who's talking to us generally wants to play board games, right?
Right.
But people who are like calling for internet service providing don't actually care about they just want their internet. They don't really want the details, right?
Right. Right.
Um, so we're lucky that we are like this kind of niche thing, and that people are kind of like just happy to be talking about board games.
Right, right. I mean, I'm happy to be talking about board games with you today. So now that we know a little bit about Kier, the employee, let's know a little bit more about the
Yeah.
Kier, the person. Kier, how are you? What did you do today?
What did I do today? I've been working today. But besides that, staying bunkered in, playing video games as I imagine most people are when they have nowhere else to go.
What video games were you playing?
Doom just came out, and I am a Doomer through and through. Doom
Right.
Eternal. Um, that is like if Level 99 Games made a first-person shooter, it would be Doom Eternal because that game has like 50,000 different like little mechanics in it. The only thing it's missing that Level 99 Games does is like character powers, but like
You know
it
what
is like
else is missing? Being family friendly, but
yeah. Well, Level 9 Games is like Seventh Cross Exceed has like a guy's head getting blown off or something. I
yeah,
guess
that's
it's
fair.
nasty. We're kind of family friendly, I'd say. We're definitely not Doom. I don't think I've ever seen Hikaru rip someone's arm off and like shove it down their throat or whatever. So
Right,
um,
right. Doom guy
we've done
definitely does something like that.
yeah.
Okay, that makes sense. How do you feel about that entire meme about Doom Eternal and Animal Crossing?
Oh, the Isabel crossover stuff.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I think the joke is that um, there's no like crossover between the two fandoms. Like they're technically competing with each other, right? But they're so completely unrelated to each other and what they provide. One is like this slow-paced slice of life Nintendo game, and the other one is this heavy metal guys getting their heads ripped off all the time. You know,
Right.
you die kind of game, right?
Yeah.
Um, but I haven't bought Animal Crossing yet, but I want to. So I think there's probably more bleed over than you might expect, right?
I think there's a lot of like gamer solidarity that's shown in that meme because like it's basically saying like, hey, we have very very different interests, but we
Yeah.
are still both very invested in games. And
Mhm.
and that's something beautiful about the gaming industry, or at least the gaming community when it's good, is that
Yeah,
it.
I think I might even say a rare showcase of the positivity from it, which is kind of like, hey, play what you want. It's not like the fan art you see is always like Isabel and Doom Marine like at a picnic or like knitting rainbows. It's never like Doom like putting Isabel's head on a pike and go like, this is what I think of weak games, right?
Right, right, right. It's a lot of like Doom guy is in an Animal Crossing setting and then doing nonchalant things, or Isabella's in Doom
Yeah,
killing
shock.
demons with Doom guy. Yeah, so I think that's the beautiful thing about this meme. But you know what else is beautiful? Questions from chat.
Oh yes,
Um, oh my god. Nicolo asks a question that I think you don't have the answer to, but we can force it.
fine.
Seventh Cross. What's up with Seventh Cross? Can Kier help us with getting the game?
Yes. Okay. Who asked that?
It was Nicolo Pacquiao.
Okay. So Seventh Cross. I mean, I can talk about Seventh Cross, right? It's on like a brief hiatus, I guess, because we're trying. We last year we like put out. I'm sure Brad's talked to this before, right? But
Right.
we were juggling like 20 different projects. Seventh Cross being one of them. But come 2020, a lot of the stuff we were doing, like we launched Kickstarters for last year, we're still doing, right? We released Imperial, which is cool. We got to get Balcon out. We got to get, Millennium Blades out, that kind of stuff. Seventh Cross is coming, but the thing is, there's some I guess you could say like production hiccups. We're pretty happy with like a lot of like the groundwork for it, development stuff, but there's been a few things like one of the artists that did the graphic design left, so we have to like get a replacement for that, which is easier said than done. There's a couple groundwork conceptual things about how the product looks, because originally we wanted to do like app development, and then kind of been iffy on that. So it's a lot of like the big holdups to Seventh Cross are not so much in what the game is, but like what the final product will look like, right? Um, it's hard to explain, I suppose, but
I mean, it's not that hard to explain, right?
yeah.
Like think about a BattleCon game, or think about BattleCon itself, or Exceed for that matter. We have, if this were an Exceed season or a BattleCon set, we have the characters to put in that set. We just don't know how many characters, what other game modes we'd provide, etc., etc. Like we're at the point where we're going through the shining on top of the box, right? Everything
Yeah.
that's inside is basically done.
Yeah, pretty much. We have the story and the characters and the gameplay and all that. It's more of just like, how are we doing the board? We've had like 20 different ideas for the board, and there's a lot of every one of them has a bunch of like physical hiccups because there's part of us that wants to do something really like cool and cutting edge. There's like the more pragmatic part of us that wants to do something more low key and cheaper. So we're kind of trying to find a middle ground. But currently, we can't really focus our attention on that until we complete the other projects that we have in the backlog.
Right. I believe Brad in chat has just said it has custom parts that are more complex to make than we anticipated, which makes sense. I'm not sure what exactly those custom parts would be.
I think he's talking about the board mostly, which is that I don't know how much we've talked about like literally what the board of Seventh Cross would look like, but the idea was that it was going to be this weird 2.5D looking extravaganza that you'd set up.
Right.
We made like a prototype for it commissioned. We had one that was sent over here, and it was cool, but it takes like an hour to set up and an hour to take down, and I think we want to go for something like simpler than what we kind of wound up having. And we don't want to make it a full out flat $300 game either. So it's hard to find a middle ground for it, I think.
Yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense. So, and it's these kinds of problems and things that we need to solve that are kind of delaying the project. I mean, on top of already, reprioritizing how the company works and going like, we're not going to work on 17 projects all at the same time. Yeah. So overall, I think that's a good direction that we're going to take, and we apologize. The thing about it is that in 2020 and onwards, we're trying to be a bit better with the way we do projects. And so that usually means announcing things when they're actually ready instead of just announcing them for no reason or just announcing them when we think they're ready and then realizing a few weeks later that they're not.
A bit more focused in general, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, it's still a project I'm looking forward to, though. I think once I'm aware it's become like a meme at this point that Seventh Cross is like the Duke Nukem Forever, the Half-Life 3 of level 99 games. But it is still my favorite level 99 thing, and I think it'll be our masterpiece once it finally comes out. And of course, Josh has told me that it'll at this point never live up to the hype because we've kept on pushing it, right? But I think it's cool. I still like it.
Right.
I don't have.
Here's the thing, though. How could it? It will never. I think here's the thing. I think what we've revealed so far about Seventh Cross doesn't actually give people the complete understanding of what it actually ends up being, and I think it'll be cooler than some people expect. I mean, some people are definitely going to have.
I think that the genre that Seventh Cross is in, which is the cooperative monster hunting genre, I think is such a booming genre. It's hit such like a renaissance almost, right?
Right.
I think like more than any other game, when I compare like a cooperative game to like what cooperative games looked like 10 years ago, they've been like one of the most rapidly improving genres.
Right, for sure.
Seventh Cross still does a lot of things that I don't see other board games do. It addresses a lot of issues that I have with like similar games in the genre.
Right.
But I think the only worry I would have is that because it's in such a renaissance, by the time Seventh Cross came out, it would be like Seventh Cross, that's, yesteryear, along with all the other trash games that were once good in 2020, like, Eon's End, or
To be
the real
fair, to be
this
fa-
game right
to be
now, right?
fair though, Kier, we could be just taking the Nintendo approach, which is that the Nintendo approach is that they just release whatever the fad was 10 years ago,
Oh,
and
yeah, right, yeah.
right, they just do it well enough that people are like, hey, yeah, this I'll take this. Like I think the point is that Seventh Cross will stand on its own merits, and that's just outside of it being the game, right? It'll be uniquely positioned in how it's packaged. It'll be uniquely positioned in how it's priced, and I think it'll be very cool. So hopefully that
Yeah.
answers your question, Nicolo.
Yeah, if there's any other questions, I'm happy to answer as well.
Right. So this is called AKA, or Ask Here Anything. So if you have anything you want to ask here right now, or if you want to follow up on your customer service request,
I'll clarify that on top of customer service, I did a lot of development for Seventh Cross, which is probably why he was asking that in general.
right.
So
right.
I'm open for questions on that as well.
Yes. Kier was, I think you were balancing and developing Seventh Cross for a while as well, until we all decided to just, grab everyone from their projects and go like, nope, all of us are doing this now. While we're waiting for more questions, though, let's talk a little bit more about you. Kier, you were talking about playing some Doom. Are you really into first-person shooters? Is that your favorite genre of game? Is Doom your favorite video game?
Doom, I love Doom. Although I can't call myself, I'm not a major FPS buff. I'm not buying every, Call of Duty or whatever that comes out. Doom is something that's special to me, although I think there's kind of a divide between this Doom and even not even the old Dooms, but the one before it, because they're so wildly different. They're technically, on paper, they're the same, right? You Space Marine, you fight demons, but the general pace of them is completely off. And I love all of the Doom games that come out, but I've noticed in the actual Doom communities, they're totally split. But I would say I'm a Doomer through and through.
Right.
Really, lately, what I've been really into for the past since I guess 2020. No, since really past few years, it feels like I've been into Yakuza. That's where it's been really at for me. So we gotta talk about Yakuza.
Yakuza is one of my favorite game series too. It's just so interesting.
That technically, unlike Doom, I would say every Yakuza game, except for the new one, is the exact same game. You're always a guy. Somehow it always ends with ripping your shirt off, fighting a Japanese dude on top of a building somewhere.
Right.
It's almost the same game every time. But I love every single one in the series. That at least has come to America. I can't get enough of it.
Right. I compare Yakuza to Pokemon. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think that's an apt comparison.
Right, like every game in the Pokemon series, it's just the same game, except they make it better. And kind of that's how Yakuza is. Every game in the Yakuza series is just the same game, except they continuously iterate and make it better. I recently played Yakuza 0. Yeah, and it's really cool because they added all of the new fighting styles. They let you play as quote unquote one of the villains, right?
Yeah.
My favorite thing in that game, which I have maybe 70 hours in Yakuza 0, 10 to 15 of those hours is spent on Majima's hostess club thing.
Oh yeah. The what is it, the worker placement game?
Yeah, it's essentially a worker placement dress up girl game, and okay, I have.
That's the big appeal of Yakuza is that every one of these games has this super melodramatic mafia plot, right?
Right.
Where people trade and kill each other, and you always have these big epic fist battles with different lieutenants of different Yakuza clans. But the side content of Yakuza is so dumb and out of place that it all bleeds together as one bizarre narrative where you're
right.
Yeah, no, that's all I got. So
no, I mean you're correct, right? So in one scene, your character, whoever you're playing, Kiryu or whatever, could be fighting 7 shirtless dudes to save this little girl who was kidnapped by this mafia boss, and this little girl's about to get stabbed, right? And then immediately after that, you go sing karaoke and play Tamiya in your local mall, the disconnect is insane, and I'm really excited for Like a Dragon. A lot of people are divided on it, but I really think this is the progression that the Yakuza series like basically needs, because now because it's a JRPG with turn-based combat, you can give Kiryu and the cast like the ability to cast meteors or whatever, and it would fit.
I love that they showed the summon magic of that game, where like the new main character Ichiban will like pull out his cell phone dramatically and like type in like someone's phone number, and it'll look like a Final Fantasy, where like some guy just comes in and he looks like Bahamut, but he's really just a big shirtless dude, and he just starts beating someone up, and like that's the summon.
See, exactly, and like Yakuza, great, best Yakuza. I think whatever is the newest Yakuza is the best Yakuza. That's in my mind, right? Generally, I mean, like, I'm not one of those Pokemon fans that always thinks, yes, Gen 1 was the best Gen of Pokemon.
I'm not like that level, but I am that level where like every Yakuza game I'll like dissect all of its flaws and be like, well, 0 did X, Y, and Z, and 6 did this and that, right?
Right.
I can get nerdy about them, but generally it's like you're saying, it's a formula that I love. I love the soap opera melodrama. I love the side content. I love beating people up in Kamurocho. So generally, it always works for me.
Right. I read an article about a French dude who went to the real life city that Kamurocho is based on, and then they were like, "Do you need a tour guide?" He's like, "I don't need a tour guide. I know every location by playing Yakuza." And I'm like, "All right."
Every 5 seconds, like you are in Yakuza.
All right. Brad's saying that he sees that copy of Power Play you have there. What is that game?
I didn't plant this at all here for streaming purposes. This is something I always keep on. This is the greatest game of all time. And Brad knows it, and you know it, Marco. I don't think anyone else in the world knows it. But if you could do a quick show of hands, how many people in the chat have played this masterpiece?
Right. So it's a game called Power Play. We published it. It was made by John Parmalee.
Yeah.
Yeah. In chat, if you've ever heard or played this game, say yes. Otherwise, say no. And also, Dui An Lee, hopefully I pronounced your name correctly, says that Kier is awesome, so helpful with my order last weekend. Kier, you have a lot of fans in chat. All right, so show of hands. Who's played Power Play? Obviously, I have.
Yeah, we played it at the retreat, and it was amazing.
I mean, let me tell everyone a story that I'm not sure if I've ever said on the show before, is that, those, like, Japanese sports festivals, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So I live in Asia Land, and we also have one of those things at our school wherein each class has to like compete against each other in a series of sports and whatever. In my class, I was part of the nerd section, which is where they put all of the top scorers in their batch or whatever. But that also means not a lot of us are really good at sports. So what it meant was like my friends and I were playing, were assigned to play volleyball, was it? Or whatever. And me and my friends were like, okay, guys, we were assigned to play volleyball. If we win, we're going to keep playing more games. But here's my strat. If we lose, we can play Power Play. And they're like, let's sandbag this game. So we sandbagged. we sandbagged the game so that we could play Power Play. That's how much I love Power Play. How about you, Kier? What is the length you've gone through to just play Power Play?
I've had before, because right now I have like a board game group. Before it was like a board game group. It used to be like a Power Play group where we just once a week met up and just played Power Play. It was just like, and it's one of those games that the more you play it, because it's such a nonsense kind of game, it kind of builds this like refining meta of, what crazy strategies work, and people kind of trying to like out gambit the last stupid strategy that worked by coming up with an even stupider strategy this time.
Right.
It's such like I think, and it's a weird game. I think the reason why, because I'm not going to be gentle here. It wasn't a super successful game, right? But I think one of the reasons why is that it's hard to really explain what
it is.
Appeal. Yeah, and I would say it's like an improv game mostly, right? And improv has that main law, which is like yes and, right?
Right.
And Power Plays, there's mechanics for like challenging people's decisions, but the big general flow of Power Play is just a bunch of nonsense happening, right? It's like I remember when we were playing with Brad and everyone else at the retreat. Brad, I think, won the game, and I remember he mentioned that like a lot. He often didn't like contest what I was because my plan was just so dumb. He wanted to see where it was going, right? Like I
Right.
had the way it works is that you all have like these secret objectives, and you kind of have to like role play out how you're going to do them turn by turn. And Josh wrote my secret objective, which was I had to slam dunk this shrunken head through a basketball hoop at a live NBA game. And the way I had to assemble that plan was so ill-conceived and convoluted that if I ever had to, like, usually in power play, if it's like, okay, I'm going to use this, leverage to announce to everyone that they have to go here and do this thing for me, people can say if it's plausible or not and vote on it. And so I did a bunch of things that are just complete nonsense, but like there'll be times where you feel like, oh, let's see where that goes, right? And that's how I didn't win, but that's how you win power plays. That you just intrigue people so much that by the time they figured out what you're doing, you've already won. That's the pro strat right there.
That's the pro strat. I think. Okay, so chat says Adam K says no, they haven't either played or heard of it. Dewey Ann Lee says that they've heard but not played it. And I think this is really interesting because hopefully this will convince some of you to at least check it out or try it out. Is it on our store? I believe it is, right?
I'm having a horrible shill right now and say that it's $20 on our store right now. And anyone who buys it, I will be your friend, and I will answer all of your power play related questions. I'll do whatever you want because I'll like
Yeah.
sibling.
Power play is okay. So full stop. For people who don't know what power play is, power play is a competitive storytelling game, right? Wherein the end goal isn't actually to win, but to create a fun story with your friends, right? So it's a really interesting game in the sense that it's like a role-playing game, kind of like Dungeons and Dragons, right? This kind of game kind of falls more in line with the Dungeons and Dragons, Fate, or other role-playing games. Except instead of all of you being in the same party, all of you are basically a bunch of evil mastermind geniuses trying to trip each other over on your schemes and skullduggery to fulfill your own nefarious ends, right? And the thing about this makes it really interesting is the level 99 game's flavor of variable character powers, which are at first hidden, then revealed midway through the game as like this big, okay, here's an example, right? In power play, your character is generally considered to be an above average person, right? They could probably kick a door down. They could probably convince the average Joe Schmo to do some menial task for them. They're somewhat charismatic, they're somewhat smart, etc., etc., etc. However, at some point in the game, you can just go, I rip the door off the wall. And people are like, no, you can't do that. And then you go, but oh, I activate my trap card. I'm actually the tank, and I have super strength. And they're like, what? And it's
very much like power play can potentially devolve into I have an invincible force field that blocks all bullets, and then says I have a dinosaur that eats force fields. And then people often in stalemates like that, they'll have to like vote on. Well, I'd say the dinosaur with this scenario here, right?
right.
It's all about the willing suspension of disbelief, I think, right?
Yeah.
That's the core logic of the game, as Looney Tunes as it gets. There is that core logic.
Right. There's a certain core. I've tried explaining this game to some people, but those games wherein you're like, you pretend to be Superman, I'll pretend to be Batman, and let's fight each other. Like that's like when you were a kid. Power play is doing that as an adult with game rules that actually govern how you should play that, right? And I think that's just the most fun I'll ever have doing a storytelling game, because here's the thing about power play. Winning power play isn't about winning power play. Winning power play is coming away from that game with a fun story to tell other people. So like in that game we played in the retreat, I lost, right? I completely got bodied by everyone because I got bodied by everyone because I think my tempo was a bit too slow. You tried, doing the Bane thing from the Christian Bale movies.
I did that, got on the microphone and said, someone must bring me the head in the next 10 minutes or I'll kill LeBron James, I think is what I said.
Right, and then we all fathomed that everybody at an NBA game really loves LeBron James, or at least cares about LeBron James. So somebody must be bringing the head to you now. And I rationale that I was the possessed, I was the ghost, so I could possess human beings. And I didn't want Kier to get the head because that was his goal, right? So, in a twist of fate, I possessed LeBron James. And as the child or teenager was coming in with the shrunken head, I had LeBron James dropkick or clothesline the teenager so that they couldn't give it to Kier. And then Brad stepped in, and Brad
there's a time bomb set you to explode in 3 seconds. So
right, because Brad was the fire starter, essentially a fire elemental who could turn things into bombs. So he touched LeBron James, and it's like, okay, LeBron James is now a bomb. Then LeBron James exploded, maiming you, killing LeBron James, but not killing me because I'm a ghost. So the crazy shenanigans you get into this game are absolutely wonderful. And by the way, Brad won that game by stealing the shrunken head and then doing an NBA Jam style dunk onto a mummified sarcophagus on the bottom of an Acropolis, right?
That was the thing, is that my plan, power play is so crazy when to play because you're creating these dumb, convoluted plans, and then as other people's plans come to fruition, you sometimes have to like discard your last plan and come up with a new one on the fly. So like at that point, my Bane tactic didn't work. So like I had to create, my new plan was to create this live Brad was, and then argue that Brad was an NBA player. But the thing is, I wound up getting like lost in this labyrinth that like Brad figured out, and literally everyone but me figured out how to navigate through this labyrinth. So everyone's just like, no, you get lost in the labyrinth and you don't make it in time to climb that. So that's like crap.
You lost on tempo. Is what happened.
Yeah. Tempo is major and powerful. You have to come up with best plan and the fastest plan.
Right.
So in a sense, it's not a game. I agree that it's not a game about winning, but you definitely have to have that it's a weird middle ground. I think that's what makes power play sometimes a hard sell.
Right.
Is that you have the fun comes from that competitive spirit where you're creating these dastardly, nonsense, convoluted, Xanatos level plans. But also you have to have like the sense of fun and improv to not just go, I'm right all the time, my plan works, your plan doesn't. You have to kind of be able to give some like give and take, right?
Right.
So as silly as it sounds, like it requires like a certain level of like maturity almost. Not to like sound like really pretentious, but
no, well, it's not, right? So here's the thing: a lot of people who have criticized power play, rightfully so, say that like it's a competitive game, but the rules don't put any limits to how you can challenge other people's assertions, right? Somebody can go like, underneath this basement is an Acropolis, and somebody can just go, no, that's not reasonable, and they're like, okay, in a meta game, somebody could just contest everything and not let anyone do anything.
Really, if you were fully planned to win, if it was like, if the Grim Reaper said, hey, beat me in this game of power play, and I'll let you live, right? You could stonewall everything. You could everything that came fight it, and so could everyone else at the table, and nothing would ever get accomplished. And if there's a flaw of power play, I don't even know if it's a flaw of power play, but if there is a flaw, if you have a table like that, there's nothing that will forward the game, kind of, right?
Right.
You have to, like any kind of like, it's similar, like, I don't know, something like Darko, Once Upon a Time, or any kind of storytelling game.
Right.
Yeah, it would require this kind of, certain mindset, certain level of commitment.
Right. And that's true, right? And ultimately, Brad, I think, put it best when I said, like, some people are complaining about that aspect of power play, and then Brad's like, the solution to that is simple. And I'm like, what is it? It's like, don't invite that guy over again.
Yeah, that was always John Parmalay's take, was that he was just like, if the problem of a game is that you're playing with a horrible person, and that the game doesn't work if you're playing with a horrible person, then just don't play with that guy.
Yeah, and ultimately, I think that's it. And maybe that's what makes power play such a hard sell, is that maybe it like requires a certain kind of person to be able to enjoy it. But if you're really into storytelling games, if you're really into making fun stories, and you want to like fight your friends as you do it, power play is the game for you. If you're so sick, and here's the thing, right? It's a storytelling game without a game master, because the game master is everyone. Everyone kind of has like, In a 5-player game, everybody has 20% of the game master's power because you all technically just vote or unvote on the feasibility of things, which means that one of the big problems of storytelling games is that everyone gets to play except this one guy. This one guy, all you're here for is that you're the computer that the other people put inputs in and then you put outputs. You don't actually play this game, right? Like, that's my problem with Dungeons and Dragons. The Dungeon Master doesn't get to play Dungeons and Dragons. The Dungeon Master gets to play Babysitting Simulator 2020, right?
Yeah, right.
Right, but Power Play doesn't have that problem. Since it essentially puts that burden on everyone, everyone gets to play. So if you say, hey, let's play a game of Power Play, nobody has to compromise their fun.
No one has to be the one guy that doesn't actually play Power. Yeah.
Right. And I think that's one of the biggest strengths of it. Because even with just 3 people, you could have a good game of Power Play, right? And that's amazing. You can't have a great game of Dungeons and Dragons with just 3 people. Because one of them has to be the Dungeon Master. So, like...
Yeah. It's definitely, I think, it's kind of niche. I think there's a lot of weird things with Power Play. I think, like, it has this super gritty art style, which I love. But at its core, like you said, it's like a children's playground kind of game, right? A friend of mine used to work at elementary schools, and like during like they do like these board game sessions, and he would always whip out Power Play, and it's a game that's really popular with obviously elementary students because they can get into that mindset of complete nonsense. And I think sometimes there's like a disconnect there, but I think. Obviously, I'm not in charge of anything, but I think if I were in charge of anything, I would be in charge of doing Power Play justice one day, right?
Right. I hope so too.
That's another time, perhaps.
Right.
I want to talk about John Parmalee for a second, if I can.
Sure.
I got shout outs to John Parmalee. When I first met Brad, him and John Parmalee were like these 2 board game designers that frequented this game store, right?
Right.
And I was so enamored with the kinds of games that John Parmalee would make. I remember I was like talking with my brother. I'm like, okay, here's like the top 3 game designers in the world. Number 1, like I don't know, Vlaada Chvátil. Number 2, John Parmalee. Number 3, Brad Tullo. That's like the level of like hero worship I was at. And to date, I think this is the only game that John Parmalee actually published. After Power Play happened, he kind of like crawled under a rock and would like Power Play sucks. And he's hidden his genius away from the general masses. And I figure that if I said it on the stream that John Parmalee is a genius and he needs to return, that maybe he shall one day.
Hopefully.
So that's my public service announcement.
PSA, John Parmalee is a cool guy. I agree too. I agree. One thing before we end this talk on Power Play. What's your favorite hidden role?
Oh, in Power Play? Or
yeah, in Power Play.
Okay, Power Play. Devil's Advocate.
Really?
No, wait, the Creep and the Pet. Creep and the Pet.
Okay, so for people who don't know, what does the Creep and the Pet do?
Okay, so the Creep and the Pet, everyone in Power Play has a special non-sensibility, right? Hidden roles. And so, like Marco said earlier, you might secretly, it's like, oh, I have super strength and I can turn invincible, right? There's one guy who just has a monster inside of his backpack, and whatever that monster comes in contact with, it just devours, right?
Right.
And Power Play is a game where you can take like secret action. You'll like write down what your turn is on like an index card and pass it to another player, and they kind of like observe it. And so often with like the Creep and Pet, you'll I don't know, open a Starbucks and then sneak the Creep inside the Starbucks, and then you'll put the MacGuffin that everyone's after inside the Starbucks, but everyone gets there. You're like, aha! But 3 turns ago, I put my giant there, and now it'll get eaten. It's always like whenever the Creep and the Pet's in the game, some dumb gotcha moment will happen where someone does a thing, and then they're surprised to find that whatever box they opened or whatever like mail envelope that they looked inside of, the pet was there, and then they just get devoured by it. And it's always my favorite of any Power Play game.
Right. Because you do get that cool gotcha moment where I've had that happen. Because you can also just put the MacGuffin in your bag, right, where the pet is, and it's actually impossible for other people to open the bag without your permission, so to speak. So you can use it to protect the object. You can use the bag as a like bait to have somebody open it and then die. That's definitely true. My favorite um, which may be kind of funny but not funny, is the Garbage Man. Uh,
That's garbage.
the Garbage Man is essentially, for all intents and purposes, he's an amalgamous being made out of little garbage monsters. So you can think of them as like little sewer rats. And his power is basically that he can divide his body up into multiple little rats, so he can like do multitasking and stuff. He's essentially a legion, right? And it's really cool because you have that power to like, like that one time it's like, I sabotage all the hazmat suits in this hospital.
Yeah.
And people are like, how do you do that? I'm like, there's 1,000 of me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I think that like, I think the Garbage Man always kind of wins those like contests of like, I can do this, and it's like Garbage Man's like, I'm like an army of monsters, so like if it comes to brute force, he always gets it.
Right. Well, if it comes to having to do a lot of things at one time, if the Garbage Man has to fight, say, the tank will always win because the tank literally cannot die.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, and my other favorite one is actually the G-Men. I really love the G-Men too.
Oh, which one's that? That's the. Is that a class? I think that's. Wait, which
No,
class is that?
it's from the. I'm not sure if it's like the superpower ones, but basically,
Oh yeah.
the
Yeah, I don't
G-Men
think
they're basically Agent Smith, right, from the Matrix. So the G-Men are pseudo unkillable, right? Like you kill one of them, another G-Man just replaces him. And their only superpower is that they're rich and have a spy network. Like that's it. But like that alone changes the way you play the game, right? Because you can always just say, "I know where something is," and they're like, "Why?" And it's like you go, "I have a spy network."
Well, actually, because that's what's fun too is when you die in power play, rather than being eliminated, you roll up like usually you roll up like a character, right?
Right.
And like a list of like traits where it's like, okay, you're a journalist now. You have a cell phone and good connections, and that's almost even better than the actual powers in the game because then you have to get like it's easy, not easy, but like if you're like, okay, you have the power things on fire, like you're like, okay, well, I'm probably gonna make a plan that sets something on fire, right? But when you have like a bunch of nonsense limitations, like, hey, all you really have is a stick of gum and a hula hoop. You're like, well, hold on, how do I take with this, right? And then whatever you come up with is usually gonna be brilliant, right?
Right. Yeah. So yeah, there you go, power play. If anybody's interested and anybody has more questions, please ask us in the chat. But we have a question here from Death the Third, which unfortunately is not something Kier can probably answer, but something I can answer. Question: I haven't seen any comments on it yet. Has Demetros gotten any big changes in the new format? We have an update about Demetros or Dimitros, however you want to pronounce that name, on Battle on BattleCon Unleashed. You can check one of our updates. There is a Demetros update there. Long story short, Demetros can only anti-1 crescendo a turn, but crescendos now provide more power. To balance that out, his styles actually all have less power, but because Switch now exists in BattleCon, or the Force Special Action, or whatever you want to call it, he actually now has access to a power +3 attack with his speed still active. So he can like throw a shot that's 6 power at like 7 speed or whatever. Yeah, so he will disbody you. There's a follow-up. If it does get answered, something more specific I'd like to know. Playing him used to be really difficult, and if he's changed, did he get anything to make him more viable? So old Dimitros or whatever, old Demi. Yeah. Old Demi was actually one of the stronger characters in the game because a lot of his kit was actually just, hey, if I play this, you can't do anything against me because I either stun you, I go out of the way, I teleport off the board, or whatever garbage, right? So he's gotten a few nerfs in that respect. Again, because of the dodge changes, because of the because of the force gauge changes, he can't actually easily stun people out anymore, and his payouts aren't guaranteed. What we've done with Demetros, though, is actually given him a few tools that he was lacking in the new format. So, Illuzori, for example, Illuzori used to be a style that let you dodge attacks that were faster than you, which makes no sense for a character whose average speed is like 7. like nobody's gonna be faster than you. You're always faster than them. Illusory now provides Demetrius range based on how much crescendo he has. So, like, if he's doing bad, it still does nothing. But if he's doing semi-decently, it gives him an option that he didn't have before, which was range and hit confirm that's not reliant on movement. Really, really important. He also got a few quality of life changes in terms of evasive abilities. So he had attacks like Vapid and Illusory, which used to not move him around. All of his other attacks tend to move him around. So those attacks now have small movement effects on them. So something like a push, something like a pull, something like a retreat one, something like an advance one, which gives Demetrius a little bit of small finite movement, which is not necessarily worse than huge movement that all of his other cards have, because sometimes small finite movement that's more controlled is better in BattleCon than big movement that you can't control. So Demetrius kind of has half of his kit is I fly across the screen, and the other half is I sidestep you a little bit. So there you go. Those are some changes. Oh, and one of the other changes. Sorry, yes?
No, I was going to say I've heard nothing but buffs. It sounds like you said like, oh, he's the greatest character in BattleCon. And you're like, also, he moves more. Also, he does more damage. And like, how has it been nerfed? That's the real question.
Right. The nerfs actually came in the core system themselves, not the key changes to the character, right? Because Force Gauge gives everybody guard, and
so that just get that all the time. Yeah.
Right. Because Demetrius only deals 1 damage at a time. So literally, if you just anti-force guard onto anything, Demetrius can't stun it. So he has to evade it instead of stunning you out, which used to be consistent in War, where there was no Force Gauge. When there was no Force Gauge, Devastation, I mean. In Devastation, there was no Force Gauge. In War, there was no Force Gauge. So prior to adding Force Gauge, Demetrius could actually stun you out of a lot of your attacks. Now, not so much, because you can just put guard on it. So that's a big nerf. The other big nerf is dodge. So dodge used to be dash, and dash used to be a 9 priority attack that if you went first, you could essentially move out of the way of someone and dodge their attack. Right? Dodge is now priority 3 and start of beat, which means that its effect happens regardless of how fast the opponent is. And that means that Demetrius' speed no longer guaranteed him. Yeah. He could no longer just beat every attack with his death blow, which was problematic because a lot of old Demetrius gameplay was I build up 17 crescendo, and then on one turn I deal 15 damage to you and you die, right? That can't happen anymore because Demetrius can't guarantee his death blows anymore, right? Because now the dodge totally counters that. So new Demetrius is more about like get crescendo, spend crescendo, get crescendo, spend crescendo, right? As opposed to stockpiling it. So I think that's a very cool new paradigm to Demetrius. Not a lot has changed, but I think it's changed enough that the character feels completely different. So Demetrius mains. This character I think is better and more fun now. So hopefully you think the same.
Cool.
All right. Sorry, Death the Third says, thanks, Marco. I appreciate the thorough answer. I guess my difficulties was myself, not him. I'm excited to see his new kit when I get my set. He's a very cool character. And I'm not saying that you're bad or anything. I'm just saying that Demetrius required a certain way of playing the game that was just so fundamentally different from any other character. Because Demetrius doesn't play like any other character. Now he does play more like the other characters because he's more about like, you know, I do a thing, I do a thing, I do a thing, as opposed to you do nothing, you do nothing, you do nothing, you do nothing, 15 damage, right? Like, so there you go.
I think I took a peek at his new kit. It seems like he's been, I think, and also in general, since original, we've cleaned things up a bit. So it's just, he's not as like, no character I think is as confusing or as complex as they initially were. So I think that alone makes him more accessible, I think.
Right. Yeah, for sure. And there's a lot of quality of life changes that I think we added into some of the more difficult characters. Because something that we started doing ever since Devastation, that wasn't really something we did in War, is that we gave characters fail-safes. Does that make sense? Like, we gave characters ways to be able to recover after playing badly. Yeah?
I said so they don't death spiral.
Right, I said they don't. So, for example, this is the same thing as Schecter. Schecter has Jugular, which gives her a Malice token even without hitting someone, right? And that's a good way to recover despite like completely failing your attack. Demetrius now has something like that. It's actually in the form of, I think, Dark Side. Basically, Dark Side gives you an extra crescendo if you have 0 crescendo. So that's a good way to recover after you fail your big payout or you get stunned multiple times. Yeah. So don't worry, Death the Third. It's not just you. It could also just entirely be the character, because Demetrius was made at the time when, recovering from your mistakes wasn't something that was valued very highly, because BattleCon, at least in the original war, was very much a game of like, you play well or you don't, right?
Yeah.
But
that's very much like the old Street Fighter games where it's just like, you beat someone up and eventually effectively like a Disney meter will appear that just says, hey, you're losing, time to lose more, and then you're like, cool,
Exactly. Yeah, it's exactly like that. So hopefully that answered your question, and hopefully I didn't make you feel too bad about it. Demetrius was really powerful, but that's not to say that it was easy to play him, right? And yeah, so does anybody have any more questions for Kier? I have a question for Kier while we're waiting.
Yeah.
Kier, what's your favorite board game outside of Power Play? Because obviously it's Power Play.
Yeah, I think I said earlier, Eon's End is the one I've been really into. Generally, I'm really into the co-op kind of games, which I think I'm like, I don't know how much you are. I know Josh isn't super into co-op. Brad wasn't super into co-op. I think he's a bit more into it. So
He had to design Seventh Cross, right?
Yeah, right. Yeah, I remember we played like 100 co-op games to like, kind of get a feel of like stuff like Gloomhaven or whatever. But Eon's End has always been my favorite just because I love the level of decision making in that game. And it's kind of like, it's almost like every year they're releasing an Eon's End game. It's almost getting too much for me to follow, but I still love Eon's End.
Right.
So yeah, I take that with me.
Right.
What's your other favorite game? I'm sure someone's asking, but
like non-level 99 games game?
My favorite is like BattleCon, right?
My favorite game has to be BattleCon. But that might be because of a sentimental thing. Because BattleCon, for people who don't know, was actually my first ever hobby board game. So, you know how people start with Catan, or people play Sushi Go, or whatever, and that gets them into the hobby? BattleCon is my that, right?
Yeah.
So
yeah, Munchkin was mine. So
Munchkin was yours? Hey, Munchkin's great too.
Yeah, it worked.
Here's the thing about Munchkin that I think I didn't realize about Munchkin until I realized something else about myself. Is that Munchkin, more than any other game, is the most like Power Play. Like, it is actually just, it kinda is Power Play sometimes, Munchkin.
Well, it's definitely a game that it's all about the people you're playing with, right?
Right.
Is that it's because Munchkin is it's not a storytelling game like Power Play.
No, it's
right?
not. It's not.
But it kind of like, I guess, like Cosmic Encounters or what have you. Games, it's all about, or what's it called, diplomacy. The entire actual appeal of the game is creating deals with people, right?
Right.
Like, hey, I'll kill it, and depending on what group you're playing as, the deals you make get like more and more nets. So it's like, I'll kill the next 2 monsters for you if you help me with this one right now, right?
Right.
So it becomes one of those games where the entire game is shaped by what table you're playing with.
Yes.
And my problem with it, I guess, is that sometimes if you're playing Munchkin with the same group every time, you'll notice that no matter what Munchkin you're playing, the dynamic will always be the same, right? Let's say we're playing at Brad's house, right? And there's this thing we notice, which is that, hey, it seems like everyone always sides with Brad, and they don't side with Marco, right?
Right.
So you get these situations where it's like, okay, Brad keeps winning Munchkin because in real life, Brad wins this social circle. So forever, Brad will keep winning Munchkin.
Right.
So that's a problem I have with diplomatic games, I guess.
Right.
Is that they kind of fall into that rut. But I still do have a soft spot for it. If I play a game of Munchkin, I can always get into the kind of begin doing my trades and my gambit, that kind of thing.
Right. How much do you like Millennium Blades, Kier?
How much do I like Millennium Blades? It's a chunky game, but I'm really fond of it. I remember that was also a game like with Seventh Cross where um, I saw it from the very beginning. I saw it when Brad first created it, and it was like a real physical card game that like you would actually like effectively it was like Magic the Gathering, and it was like this 5 hour extravaganza where you would play real games of cards. Now it's more of an abstract installation,
Right.
but I've seen that like rise and fall and rise again. I do like Millennium Blades a lot, though. I think I actually am really into the co-op boss mode that was introduced in set rotation. I think.
I love that
Yeah,
mode. I love that mode. It's so fun. But also I really like the core competitive mode, so to speak, because I think one thing in Millennium Blades that a lot of players don't get is that they always tell me trading in Millennium Blades is underpowered. And I'm like, is it though? You know what I mean? It's like I have gotten so much mileage out of trading and making deals in Millennium Blades that I feel like people just aren't doing it enough. And I think somebody like you who plays Munchkin kind of gets what I'm getting at, right? Like,
yeah. Well, I think a big thing with Millennium Blades because it is. I think it's safe to say that it's our most complex game, right? Um, and it's definitely a game that favors the veteran player over the new player, right?
yeah, for sure.
Because I agree with that trade sentiment if you're playing with if you're, for instance, introducing Lion Blades to your friends, or even if you're just playing with veterans, but one of you has played it more than the others, um, it'll ultimately come down to like that guy who plays the most knows the value of the cards, right? And obviously, it's not rocket science to say the person who knows about the game will always win the game, but it is that thing where it's like it might be a trade up for you. Really, it's a trade but only my large pulsating brain has the power to like deduce that kind of information, right?
Right.
So I've seen people get overwhelmed by it for sure. Um, but yeah, I kind of agree is that like there's a certain like mentality you have to have with the trading because players could if they wanted to just never trade with anyone, but that's sort of not. Um, that's I would say that's not what the game's about, right? And
Well,
I don't
it's
necessarily think
I also think it's not correct, Like sometimes attempting to most of the time attempting to make deals and trying to make deals with people is not only more fun, but it's actually objectively just the correct thing to do, right? Because a lot of the time, the best thing about a deal is that when you two do the deal, both of you benefit, like maybe even equally benefit, right? Both of you benefit in some way. And really, what makes that deal worth it is not that, hey, I'm fighting against this guy, why would I benefit him, right? The thing about it is that you two could benefit each other, but there's still two other players who aren't benefiting from that deal. So you're making your position between the two of you stronger, but the other two aren't getting stronger as a result, which means that you and the other guy catapult a bit up about the other two, right? Or whoever other players aren't part of the deal. And that alone should be more than enough, right? Like, if you're in third place and fourth place, you could trade with each other and hopefully shoot past first and second place guys, right? Like,
yeah. There's definitely a lot of nuance to who you're trading with is a big thing too, right?
right.
If you're trading at first place, then if we're both getting the same amount for a collection, that might put me above the guy. If I'm in second place, I want to trade with the guy in first place, right? So there's a lot of like little intricacies to it.
Yeah. So I think people just haven't figured those intricacies out, and I think that's why they think trading is so weak. But trading is so powerful. Like, even if you're playing with equally skilled other players, because they also understand the value of trading with you if you're in the correct spot, right? Like, I would trade with first place player. For example, I'm second place, and first place, I'm trading with them, and it makes their deck better. Here's the thing, though. I was already losing that tournament, right? Because they're first place, so they're winning that tournament anyway. But if they trade with me, my collection becomes an 8-card collection. And that could possibly catapult me into first place at the end of the game. Because what a lot of people don't realize is that winning Millennium Blades isn't always about winning tournaments. It's about winning the correct number of tournaments while you're still making the correct number of collections. And some people...
I agree.
Yeah.
It's definitely, like, that's what I was kind of getting at. Is that the game is so complex. It's hard to make like a binary kind of blanket statement of like, this is never a good idea or this is always a good idea.
Right.
Because the whole appeal of the game is kind of piecing together. You're inside of this puzzle effectively, right?
Right.
who's the most powerful player? What are the most powerful cards available? What are my options? And kind of every game is kind of solving that puzzle, right?
Yeah.
So there's going to be games where the answer is don't trade, and there's going to also be games where it is like, well, hold on, I can get in second place and lose to this guy and have 7 cards in my collection, or I can get in second place, lose to this guy, and have 8 cards in my collection, right? This guy might not have that same level of confidence, and he'll do whatever it takes to win the tournament. So I think like that's where a lot of the fun of the game comes in, is those kinds of like reads of the table, right?
Right. And understanding the sets that are in the game, like you said, it essentially throws you into an environment that's fresh and new every time, right? And it's not just the people you're playing with; it's the sets that are in the game, the characters you're playing, whatever venues there are, and figuring out that puzzle is basically what Millennium Blades is, right?
Yeah.
That's
what's weird about the game, is that it's so complex, but the complexity is part of the appeal too. If it wasn't as complex as it is, it would be like like the ability to try to deduce what the optimal board state is, and who's winning and what you need and what you need to do and all of that is it is the puzzle, and you're always trying and solving puzzles.
Right, and I think that's really cool because not a lot of games do that, right? In a lot of other economic games or Euro placer games or whatever, the value of something is always determined, right? Broadway's always worth this much, gives this much rent. Putting a power plant up does this amount of resources. You know what I mean? Like,
there's that solvable angle to it, right?
Yeah. But in Millennium Blades, Exaltius could be the best card in one game, and then you change one of the sets, and Exaltius is trash, right? Like,
right.
So it's really cool and really interesting. I believe we have time to answer one more question. Then we'll end the podcast, livecast. Yeah. So, Death the Third asks, has anyone from Level 99 had thoughts of making a legacy game? I find them insanely fun, and with Level 99 games a strong sense of theme, I can see you guys doing some amazing stuff. Kier, what's your answer to that?
That's a complex answer. It depends what you define as legacy. Seventh Cross is sort of legacy-ish, but I think, I guess I'll ask, by legacy game, do you mean like full-on legacy game? Because there's campaigns and there's legacies, right? Campaigns are just series of games in a progression. Legacy games are ones that I always associate with like stickers on cards, ripping things apart, doing a bunch of not so kind of permanent things. So what would you consider a legacy game? I ask to Death the Third.
Right. I'm in my mind, I think legacy game is. I think in my mind, legacy games are games wherein your decisions in a previous game matter in the future games, right? But I don't necessarily think that legacy games have to be the games where, you permanent marker a card or you rip a card in shreds or stuff like that, right?
Aside from Seventh Cross, Josh is working on a top secret down the line project, which is one of the most bonkers takes on the genre I've ever seen. And that's all I'll say for the matter.
Right. Obviously, it's a legacy dating sim. Each time you play... Each time you play, the characters you dated know who you dated last time.
They like you a little.
It's a roguelike dating sim. Okay. Adam K asks, will playmats be shipped rolled up in the future? How do you ship playmats, Kier?
Well, we don't ship playmats ourselves. We have a development center that does it. But usually when I ship a playmat, I roll. But I don't ship it as often as like if you order a playmat online, I'm not the guy sending it to you. Usually it's a Shark Robot or a Fill Right. So,
all right.
How do you like your playmats, Adam? Okay, just curious.
Right. I believe they like it rolled. Death the Third says either, but more on the permanent changes by destroying and modifying pieces.
Yeah. So that's not Seventh Cross's deal, but the game that Josh is working on is, I would say, adjacent to. There's 2 games of Josh. Well, there's 3 games. Josh is working on a lot of games. One you'll be seeing in the future that's not that game. But one past that is kind of like this. Your
decisions matter.
Doing these decisions that impact future things and doing a bunch of kind of crazy decisions that you have no idea what they are, and then you play like a game, and then it's like, oh, it turns out you're listening.
Right.
That's always roller coaster ride of that is a lot of fun, I think, in that genre.
Right. So it's very unique. We'll call it a legacy game, but when you see it, you won't think of it as one. You know what I mean? Like, it does not look like any other legacy game you'll ever see.
Yeah. say it doesn't fit the typical.
Right.
But I think it has that appeal. Before we go, actually, I have a public service announcement I have to make.
Okay,
because
sure.
I've seen. Hope everyone's staying safe from the the virus. We are still operating. Our fulfillment centers are still shipping things out. Sometimes I'm a little slower in sending things out because I only visit the office like a week or so,
Right.
mostly at home. But I just want everyone to know that keep giving us your money, I guess.
Don't say that. We just want everyone to know that Level 99 Games is still operating.
Yeah.
Come on, man. Come on. Somebody says that the truest legacy game is to release the sleeves. Gosh, I wish. Kier, how likely is it that we can make custom Van Diesel sleeves?
Oh, wow. Not likely at all,
but in your heart of hearts, you know it to be true.
We'd have to make enough for every single card in Money Blaze, because that would be because we're already doing that 200, 2,500 sleeves. Do we just make that promotion, but they're all Van Diesel sleeves? Is that the plan here?
Yes, obviously, but it will cost you $1 million.
Yeah, what was it that dumb tier we had in Money Blades, the $9,001 tier, where we turn every copy of your game into a card. There's a $9 million tier where we turn every card in your game into a shining Van Diesel card.
Yes,
they're all Van Diesel sleeves, and that's just that's all you get.
The $9 million tier for the next Millennium Blades, if it ever happens, should be that Vin Diesel himself delivers the game to you.
Yeah, $9 million. I don't know, maybe not. I don't know.
But yeah.
That's the treat. Let me know in the chat, everyone. Email me if that works, if you want $9 million Van Diesel promotion.
Right.
Start a petition. But otherwise, probably.
Okay, roguelike legacy dating sim sounds amazing for all the wrong reasons. You mean all the right reasons? I mean, a game like that already exists. By the way, it's called Boyfriend Sword, wherein each of your weapons is actually a boy that you can date. Yeah. So,
but it hasn't been done in a card game yet, and that's what matters.
In the board game space, we need to date our swords. Adam K says rolled up to prevent creases. We should probably... Can we try to get that to our fulfillment centers and tell them to send it rolled up? Or
I don't know how they ship it out. I know that when I ship something out personally, if someone needs a replacement, I roll it up. But it's a good memo to give out.
All right, cool. And Moriarty says, no, Kier, packs of 100 or whatever as a generic sleeve. But that's not as funny as making Vin Diesel personally deliver them to you. So, is that really the essence of Van Diesel if it's not memey enough?
There's a middle ground, I'm sure, that we haven't discovered.
$500,000. Is it okay to pick up roguelikes in a dungeon? No. Stop, Josh. Because of that, I'm ending the live cast. It doesn't count if it isn't on a card, obviously. True.
True. Me personally, so I'm gonna bail.
All right, everyone. So thank you so much for watching this episode of the Level of Us Livecast. Hopefully you enjoyed. Talking to Kier and asking Kier anything. As usual, it's been me, your host, Marco DeSantos, also the Mechanic Critic, and with me is the ever amazing, ever wonderful, ever delivery customer service boy himself.
Thank you. Pleasure being here. Everyone, take care. Stay safe.
What's your name, dude? You have to say your name.
Oh, gosh. Okay. I'm Kier Arnold. Contact me at kier@level99games.com. If you need anything, I'll always be happy to help. Hope everyone stays safe, has fun, plays more games, plays Power Play specifically. I'm going to keep showing that. And have a good day.
Have a good day, everyone. Thank you, World of Indians. Thank you, and good night.